All right, well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. Thanks for coming along this evening. My name is Paul Horan. I'm the Deputy Principal of the college, and part of my portfolio is student learning. So the purpose of tonight is to try and present some information to you that will help the process of your sons choosing subjects much, much easier. Because we know when the boys hit senior and they have to go through that process of selecting, it's very daunting for them. And in a lot of cases, it's also very daunting for the parents. It's a completely new language, it's a completely new set of rules that they have to get familiar with, and it takes a lot of time to get your head around. So this is very much going to be a nuts and bolts presentation. I'm going to try and explain some of the terminology of senior school, suggest subjects that are beneficial for your son to choose, outline some of the processes that we're going to take with your son to make sure that he does have a good selection of subjects once he begins in Year 11. I've introduced myself. I'll just introduce some other members of the college, and these people are the heads of department or the subject heads, and if you're looking for specific information about the relevance and the worth of the subjects and the content that's covered, you're best speaking to these particular people. So I'll just get them to stand up or show their hand. So we have Kay Morley. Kay is in charge of our humanities faculty. Jackie Russell. Jackie is our careers and guidance counsellor. Mr. Wayne Wall, just appointed as our new head of science. Mr. Robert Green, head of industrial technology. The two fellows over here on my left, Mr. Brendan Scoothorpe, head of religion. Mr. Matthew Wilson, acting head of English. In the far corner, we have Mr. Peter Reddy, head of physical education. I'm looking around, Mrs. Karen Doherty. Karen is our head of year, so she will work through this process with your sons. Mr. Peter Bartlett, I think, is only here in the capacity of a parent because his son is going to be speaking to you a little later on, and Peter is our head of Indigenous education. So I don't think, oh, sorry, over here with the boys, how could I forget? Mr. Bill Grieve, our head of mathematics. No, you're not. I told you that before. And two people that couldn't make it, Mrs. Leanne Hanley, our head of art, and Miss Sheridan Sims, our head of information technology. They had a conference down in Brisbane and their flight was delayed, so they're not going to be back. But if you need to contact them, their email addresses are readily available in the handbook that we publish every year. So I've been doing this presentation for about 15 years, and some people would say it's probably time that I moved on and got a life. But the social aspects of my life are not the point of me telling you that. I've been telling you that because over those 15 years, this presentation has changed significantly, and it's changed the most in the last 12 months because your sons are part of a new educational system in Queensland. The OP system, which many of you might be familiar with, is no longer in existence. It's gone, and your sons are starting a new process. One that they're feeling quite nervous about, one that the teachers across the state are feeling quite nervous about, and also the administrators of the systems in Queensland are also feeling quite nervous about it. But despite those changes, it's this piece of wisdom that I would like you to focus on, or at least take away from this presentation this evening. If you can grasp the meaning of that cartoon and apply it to your son's subject selection process, he is going to be in a better spot. We have a wolf there saying, "Lucky skunks, I hate this desk job." He hates that desk job because he's doing something that is inherently not in his nature. That wolf is not meant to be sitting at that desk. He's meant to be out running with the pack, running through the hills and chasing deer. If that becomes your son over the next 2 years of senior schooling, his life is going to be miserable. That means your life is going to be miserable. That means the teachers' lives are going to be miserable. So if you can take one thing away, it's find out what sort of wolf he is. Get him to focus on his talents and his skills and his interests, and as a first port of call, choose those things or those subjects that are going to feed his inherent nature. Because that doesn't work. It never does. And we see it every year. Kids say, well, I'm going to do mathematics methods when I'm struggling with core mathematics in year 10. I'm going to choose visual art and I've never painted before. I'm going to suddenly become a master of digital technology and I'm hardly able to turn on a laptop. All right? Find out what your wolf is. Caleb, one of the guys you're going to hear from, Caleb is a musical wolf. So he studies general music, which is an OP subject. He also does music theory and performance. He also does guitar. Kevin is a mathematical wolf. Kevin does physics, specialist mathematics, mathematics methods, and he was there talking to your sons today, and he told them that they should do that subject because he loves it, okay? Kev loves it, not necessarily your son. If your son does not like mathematics, yes, he has to do a mathematics, but he doesn't have to do every mathematics, okay? If he likes art, get him to run with that passion. Because when they do the subjects that they enjoy and they like, the results are going to be better and the pathways certainly open up for them. Okay? Don't try and force a square peg into a round hole. It all works out in the end by doing what they want to do, by taking those things that they have that passion for. So that's my big holistic spiel for the evening. Right? Think about that with your sons. In regards to the other subject choices, there are still parameters. It's not just open slather. He can't choose everything that he wants because there are still a couple of different subjects. We have compulsory subjects and we also have elective subjects. In regards to the compulsory subjects, they're the ones that he has to do, and he has to do them to meet his QCE requirements. That's the certificate that he gets at the end of grade 12. So there has to be a literacy component and there has to be a numeracy component. We're also a Catholic school, so he has to meet those aspects that build his Catholic identity. They're compulsory, and there are 3 of those in total. English, which we now refer to as general English, or essential English. Essential English is a foundational level English, general English is a university prerequisite. Mathematics. General mathematics, which is your mid-range level of maths, mathematics methods, which is a higher level of maths, and essential mathematics, which is your foundational level maths. He has to do one of those. And he also has to do a religion subject. Okay? So the study of religion, which is high level theology, the religion and ethics, which is your lower level religion topic, and all those, also the Certificate 3 in Christian ministry. Okay? Which is a broader religious topic, and Mr. Scoothorpe can fill you in on the differences between those. So once he's got those out of the way, he then has to look at his elective subjects. And the elective subjects are those that are going to give him the prerequisites he needs for university, or they're going to be the ones that will directly gear him towards a trade, or they're going to be the ones that fill his workplace ambitions. Okay? In total, there are 3 of those that he gets to choose, but there are 6 categories of subjects on offer here at the college for him to choose from. When he chooses 3 compulsory subjects and 3 elective subjects, that gives him 6 subjects in total, or a 6-line timetable is what we operate. So he will do 6 subjects, all of which will have 4 hours contact time per week, plus 1 assembly per week, which makes up our 25-hour timetable. So the 6 categories that we talked about, they're all here. And this is where the things start getting a little bit complicated because it's... Should I do that, Corey? No. Was that a question I didn't need to ask? This is where it starts getting complicated because the terminology is unfamiliar to a lot of people. But general subjects, applied subjects, vocational education subjects, distance education, music certification, and also external provider courses, either TAFE or university. And he can do any range of those subjects. Right? They're all available for him. So if we start with the general subjects, they're the ones that are best described as tertiary or your academic subjects. And they're the subjects that more than the others will contribute towards his direct placement in a university. They're also called ATAR subjects under this new system that we are entering to. Because if you do the majority of those particular subjects, the general subjects, they will determine his ATAR, the Australian Tertiary Admissions Rank, this score that will help get him into university. Okay? And here's the list of the possible options that he has that we will offer at the college in 2020. Okay. Now, just because they're up there at this stage doesn't mean they all run. Okay? There are limits to class sizes, and some of them, if they don't get enough numbers, won't run. Your son will then be given a second preference that he'll have to select. But generally speaking, we try and run as many of those particular subjects as we can, again, to appeal to that wolf or all those wolves that are out there. We run a wide variety of subjects for a school that's relatively medium-sized. Okay? So as I said, they're the ones that will contribute most to the ATAR. So what is an ATAR? It's a number, and it's a number on a 2,000 rung scale. The lowest of those numbers is 0.0, and the highest of those numbers is 99.95. If your son is a 99.95, it effectively means, in very brutal terms, that he has beat 99.95% of the Queensland high school population when he graduates. Okay? You're talking about a quite remarkable academic achievement. Yeah? In total, of the 60,000 students who graduate, when your sons will graduate, there will be 30 boys or girls who will have an ATAR of 99.95. And then progressively, as you go down those 0.5 increments, it's another 30. And that's basically how the system works. It's very much a fine-grained system. The old OP was quite broad. And OP1, there are about 720 kids across the state would get one annually. Okay? This system, it's 30 kids getting a 99.95. But that's the mechanism that's used nationally. And while it was always there in Queensland, behind the scenes per se, it's now become much more out in the open. Okay? ATARs below 30 are not recorded. So if your son is below an ATAR of 30, what will appear on his senior statement is simply 30.00. They don't go down to the zeros. Okay? And there's probably good reason for that. Pretty much said that one. And how is the ATAR used? Well, it's a cut-off point for entry into a university course. And so automatically everyone thinks that it's the hard university subjects that have the higher ATARs. Well, popular university subjects also have high ATARs. And universities that are perceived to be more popular or better than others will also have high ATARs. It's a way of scaling people out into particular courses. And to give you some examples, there are a couple of courses who advertised their ATARs last year. If you want to take the medicines, as in the case of Bachelor of Physiotherapy, you need to be up there in the 99s. That's if you want to do it at the University of Queensland. You can get into JCU, into their medicine courses. You can get into CQU on their medicine courses at ATARs around about the 95 mark or less. All right? So there are options for a lot of those medical style degrees that don't necessarily mean you've got to get a 99.00 or better ATAR. Okay? And you can see progressively as we go down to university courses that are less popular or deemed to be slightly less demanding, that the ATAR scores go down. For a Bachelor of Engineering, the co-op program at CQU, an ATAR of 85, which was equivalent last year to an OP of 8, your son would need to be getting high Bs, maybe with an A thrown in there, to get that ATAR. They haven't released a lot of the ATAR information yet. They're waiting to see the first lot of results that come through before they publish those. So we're still up in the air as to exactly how the university courses are going to align directly. Okay, but that'll give you an idea. So how do you become ATAR eligible? To be ATAR eligible, the first thing is he's got to pass English. So he has to pass general English or he has to pass essential English at year 12. And I've got up there units 3 and 4. The new system is structured in 4 units, which basically replicates 4 semesters. So in grade 12, he will do 2 units of study. He has to pass them both together as a pair of subjects to be deemed eligible for an ATAR. Then he has to make sure that he studies 5 general subjects for all of those 2 units of Year 12. Okay, so a lot of times that really hasn't changed from the old system. The old system basically used to be they'll take your 5 best subjects to make your OP, they'll take your 5 best subjects to make your ATAR. Okay, that's fairly consistent in that respect. Okay. Now on the flip side of that, he can also study 4 of those things called general subjects, okay, and he's got the option of doing a vocational education subject or an applied subject. That will also make him ATAR eligible. And I'll explain that as we go a little bit further. I think the beauty of QTAC in their wisdom is what they've done is to say your ATAR is only dependent on your Year 12 work. All right? So Year 11, for his ATAR score, it won't contribute. And that's good because I can guarantee that your son, even if he's a high academic performer, will be up here at Year 10 and will go down here at Year 11. Most boys, the vast majority, dip into Year 11. It's a much larger content load, it's a much larger assessment load, and the demands are higher. So they progressively, or they dip, but then they pick up. And we can track them over 2 years, and most boys continue to improve all the way through to the end of the year. Okay, but that's a fundamental pattern. Don't let it scare you initially. It'll happen. As much as we try and prep them and tell them this is going to be hard, well, it is going to be hard. Okay? And most of the boys find Year 12 easier than Grade 11 because they've been exposed to the content, they've been exposed to the assessment demands, they've been exposed to the way that the teacher delivers the information. All right. My recommendation, if you want to be ATAR eligible, take 5 general subjects or take 6 general subjects. I wouldn't be relying on this point here. I wouldn't want to rely on a vocational education certificate or an applied subject to necessarily boost my ATAR. So if you're thinking about university, go holus bolus, 5 general subjects or 6 general subjects. There is a benefit in taking 6. Would someone like to tell the group what that is? You can drop one. That's probably not the negative connotation we want to tell the boys. That's like, as soon as I say that to them every year, they go, you can fail one. No, you don't want to do that, okay? But you've got an ace up your sleeve per se. Of those 6 general subjects, they will take your best 5 results, okay? So you do have some wriggle room there, okay? If you're a high academic performer already, you've got good study routines, good habits, take 5 and use the other line to do something else. And Mr. Wall's nodding his head there. I think your son's done 5 and picked up a line of study. Yeah, that's an option as well. And for a lot of boys, that works. Okay. So, ATAR English. And I guess this is an interesting twist to that whole structure, is that while you have to pass English, it doesn't necessarily have to contribute towards your ATAR. Okay, so if you're a maths wolf and your sciences and your maths are better subjects, you do have to do English, but if your other subjects are better than that, then it won't count. All right? You've just got to get across the line. It's a prerequisite for your university. So how is an ATAR produced? Each assessment item in Year 12 will have 4 assessment tasks, and each of those tasks is worth a certain number of marks. In total, though, every general subject will add up to 100. So you're going to see a raw score out of 100 on your son's senior certificate. Okay? There will be 5 numbers there indicating what he achieved, and then there will be his ATAR as well. If we have a look at English as an example, that's the way that they distribute their marks, evenly. Every assessment task that your son does will be worth 25%, meaning 25 marks. For biology, it's a little bit different. First item for biology is a thing called a data test, and it tends to be smaller. It's only worth 10 marks. The second assessment task and the third assessment task are both out of 20 marks. And then the kicker, item 4, which is the external examination, 50 marks. Mathematics is similar. If we use mathematics methods, It's the same for general mathematics. They have the same breakdown. The first task is an investigation, I think, Mr. Grieve. It's worth 20 marks. The next two tests are 15 marks, and you've got, like biology and the sciences, a 50% exam at the end, okay? And this is probably the thing that's causing people the most panic and tension. Your son has to do an external examination, all right? And that external examination is going to contribute, for the maths and sciences, 50% of his results, and for the humanities subjects, it's going to contribute 25% of his results. Okay? For the humanities subjects, it's also going to test all of Unit 4. For the maths and sciences, that 50% or that 50 marks can come from content of all of grade 12, Unit 3 and Unit 4. Okay, so when your son tells you he is going to cram for his math methods test 2 days before the scheduled exam, you want to tell him he's kidding himself. Okay? Their study routines are going to be the biggest thing to get them through. It's about constant revision, small pieces all the way along for basically the 2 years of their senior schooling. Okay? Now, all of this again sounds daunting, all of this sounds terrifying because we haven't worked on it. But for a kid that's doing 5 general subjects, we also need to bear in mind that from pretty much February to September, he's only going to be doing 15 pieces of assessment. So for 3/4 of his senior year, he's only doing 15 pieces of assessment. And then an external examination for each of those subjects. The kids at the moment can have upwards of anywhere between 35 and 40 pieces of assessment at senior. And that's one of the reasons the system is changing, because they were killing kids. Okay? A subject like Mathematics B, they might have 8 pieces of assessment across the year. Some of your English subjects would have 6 pieces of subjects. SOR might have 5. This system streamlines it all and said you can only do 4. So while the notion of these external exams sounds scary, the workload is narrower and it's less in terms of contact time. So, in terms of the raw score or the numbers that he gets, this is what it'll look like. Okay? So I've given you an example from biology, geography and mathematical methods. It's broken down into the 4 assessment tasks, and you can see there is a raw score for each of those. So in our case model, 84 out of 100 for bio, 70 for geography, and 72 for mathematical methods. QCA then takes those 5 best subject results, puts them together, weaves their magic in the back end of a database somewhere, and comes up with his ATAR score based on that. Okay? Does that sound fair? Someone's nodding, others aren't. Okay? So your best 5 subjects, put them together, and work out his results. The external examinations, well, those external examinations are produced by the QCAA, and the QCAA is the Queensland Curriculum Assessment Authority. They govern these processes for senior school. All right. The subjects exams or the external exams are subject specific. Okay? So if he's been studying chemistry, he does a chemistry exam. If he's been studying physical education, he does a physical education exam. That's different from the current system as well, in that the boys have to do the QCS test, right, which is not subject specific. It's a very generalised literacy and numeracy test. Okay. The external exams are marked by the QCAA as well. Right? So where our boys are familiar with the teacher setting all of the exams and marking all the exams, for the external one, that's not going to happen anymore. Right? And that's daunting too. Okay. Those exams are undertaken also by every student at the same day, at the same time, under the same conditions. And that's a process that hasn't been familiar to a lot of people that haven't done the QCS test. Okay. I mentioned that one there before. A little bit more about the external examinations, talked about that one. And this is interesting, and it's a change that a lot of schools are dealing with. Okay. So you've probably heard about the New South Wales system. Their grade 12s tend to finish school a lot earlier than the Queensland system by about 4 weeks. Well, we're going to a system where we're going to be following their lead. So your sons will come back from the September holidays in Year 12, and then they will have 3 weeks at school, and during that 3 weeks the teachers will be finalising their unit work, the topics for the units that they may be doing, or the teachers may be revising for exams. Your sons will be doing practice exams, all in that 3 weeks, and for all intents and purposes, school stops then. And it's not going to stop just only for your general students, it's going to stop for boys doing vet subjects and also the boys doing applied subjects. So they finish at the end of week 3. We're looking to have our valedictory or graduation ceremony at the end of week 3. Everyone goes home. The boys have to come back to the school for their individual exams. The English exams will be the first ones conducted on the Monday of week 4 of Year 12, but then depending on your son's choices, they could be anywhere from the start of week 4 to the end of week 7.5. Okay? So we'll be looking at running tutorials and making your teachers available for the boys to come in for that period of time. But generally speaking, once the week 3 finishes, the boys are on their own and they're only coming back for exams. Subject teachers will not be in those exams, and those exams will be monitored by what they call an external vigilator. People from the community to come in, distribute the exams, monitor the processes. Okay? Sounds very rigid, but that's the same as a QCS test as well. Okay. So, I mentioned about that fairness thing, and that leads on to this process of scaling. I said your son's 5 subject areas are scaled, right, before his ATAR is produced by the QCAA. Scaling is a way of trying to make the subjects even, and probably the biggest reason they do it is so that kids don't get an inflated ATAR by choosing what's perceived to be easier subjects. All right? Now, we were never able to use that terminology necessarily under the last system, but let's be honest, mathematical methods is much harder than general mathematics. Specialist mathematics is much harder than general mathematics. Study of religion with its theological content is probably much harder than geography. Physics is probably much harder than physical education. Right? So how do they weigh up that? They either raise your raw score for your subject up, or they bring your raw score for your subject down, and hopefully by doing that process, everything meets somewhere in the middle. So if you score an 80 out of 100 for specialist mathematics, that may get scaled up to 85. If you score an 80 out of 100 for geography, that may scale down to 75. Okay? With the idea that your range of subjects doesn't necessarily lead to a better ATAR than what it's meant to do. And that is the end of general subjects. Does anyone have any questions? Shocked silence. Wayne Laverty, you're never lost for words. Surely you're going to throw something at me.
Well, I was going to ask actually if you actually get told the scaling, you know, when the kids...
Not yet. Yeah.
The kids, when they select their subjects, they're just assuming that chemistry's...
Yeah. That's what you've got to assume at this stage, because they won't produce any scaling data until the first lot of students have gone through at the end of next year. So those guys, you missed it by 1 year, but they're the real guinea pigs, the current year 11s. Okay? They're getting smashed all over the place with all this information. All right? But yes, scaling data will be released and available post-2020 at some stage. Good question, Wayne.
How's it affected if they change subjects and say go 11, say they go from mathematical mathematics
To general mathematics?
to general science? Because once they understand that scaling, it makes them suitable.
Yeah. Again, I wouldn't be looking at, do I do mathematical methods because I think I'm going to get a better score? I'd be looking at, do I do mathematical methods because I'm pretty comfortable with mathematics and I enjoy mathematics? And that goes back to the whole wolf thing. Right? And I know that's a hard situation to make, but that is. In regards to changing subjects, we want to try and avoid that at all cost. because it's complicated and it's messy. Right? It does happen. We had about 11 boys, I think, leave mathematical methods and go to general mathematics. We've had a number of boys leave English to English Essential, and that's all taken place now. And we try and monitor them as best we can to make sure that that's having as few impacts on them as we can. And there are processes that we've got in-house in regards to assessment and how that is undertaken when kids swap and change. But if you can prevent the changing of subjects now, it makes everyone's life easier down the track. Okay. So, back to the main slide, we've got our categories of subjects. Applied subjects are the next one. Your applied subjects could pretty much be described as non-ATAR subjects. They're certainly very practical, they're certainly hands-on, and the idea of the applied subject is that they provide your son with basic work skills and basic life skills. Okay. There's a range of applied subjects. All right. And as I said, they're much more hands-on. So you can see your aquatics practices has a large practical element. Your ICT, which is a computing course, has a lot of practical applications to it. Your visual arts in practice, again, they're all practical subjects. Okay. Those particular subjects, though, don't have any less of a time demand per se, or they're not given any less time. Your applied subjects, each of those has 4 one-hour blocks per week. In regards to the applieds, though, your son, if he takes those, does not have to go through the process of external examinations at the end of year 12. And a lot of boys are pretty happy about that when I mentioned that today. Okay? And they're marked on a schema that gives your son an A to E result, whereas the general subjects are marked on a schema that has numerical data on it. Your son will still get an A to E result for his general subjects, but that's on a conversion scale that we use in grade 11, and that's endorsed by the Queensland Curriculum Assessment Authority in grade 12. Okay, that one was quick. Vocational education and training, or VET subjects. We offer a wide range of VET subjects, and the term vocational education is one that most of the boys were familiar with, but a lot of them weren't familiar with this terminology. VET subjects can also be called competency-based subjects, module-based subjects, and certificate-based subjects, or trade subjects. So when you're looking through the documentation, that language, those terms, they pretty much all mean the same thing. They're competency-based because your son has to prove that he is competent at the skill to be signed off on that competency. And a lot of competency subjects or VET subjects tend to be observational, all right? If I'm welding, Robert Green will teach me to weld, and Rob will watch me weld, and Rob will check those welds. If there are big holes in my welds and there's metal slag everywhere, Robert's going to say, Paul, you're not yet competent. So go back, have another go, practice, come back and see me when you're ready. So I come back and I show Rob again and demonstrate it. If I'm competent, he'll tick me off on that particular module, and a module is just another name for a topic. Okay. And your VET subjects, they're pretty much precursors for apprenticeships and traineeships and your footstep into industry. And the same courses that we deliver here have modules that are done out there in industry as well. Okay? The beauty about undertaking VET subjects for your son is that it doesn't have an external examination either. It allows them multiple opportunities to prove that they are competent, and the certificate that he gets is nationally recognised. It's the same standards applied in Yeppoon as applied in Perth, as applied in Darwin. And so he can take his qualifications with him wherever he decides to travel. The other beauty about the VET subjects is that your son can create his own ready-made resume. If he decides that he's going to do Certificate 2 in construction, a Certificate 2 in engineering, a Certificate 2 in rural operations, and a Certificate 3 in fitness, there's an additional 4 certificates that he gets to show an employer when he walks in for an interview. Okay. There's a list of VET subjects that we got on offer. Okay, construction is your basic building course, furniture making is your cabinetry course, automotive is electrical, Certificate 2 in engineering is the one that is the precursor for fitting and turning, diesel mechanic, boilermaker. Your Certificate 2 in Tourism is the one that'll give your son an introduction into the hospitality industry. So if you come downstairs later and you have something to eat and drink with us, the boys who will serve you beer and wine are the boys doing the Certificate 2 Tourism. If you want a coffee, they will make you a coffee. So those guys walk out with a gaming licence, a responsible service of alcohol licence, a wait staff licence, as well as the other certificate. So it's a good one to have to be able to work in a pub, a bar, a club, or any of the hospitality industries. Certificate 3 in Fitness, that's the minimum standard requirement for your son to be a fitness instructor or to deliver training in a gym. So downtown at Ready Gym, the people that are working there have that same certificate, okay? And they probably take it to one step further, which is a Certificate 4. Again, vet courses, nationally recognised, same standards. Okay. Distance education. I put distance education in because if there is something your son wants to do and we can't offer it, maybe we don't have enough kids in a class to run it, he's still got the option of finding an online provider or a distance provider and doing the subject through them. The one that I recommend is the Brisbane School of Distance Education, and I recommend them because they deal with high school students. Other online providers open it up, open slather basically to adults. But the School of Distance Education works with kids, and they know kids and they know how kids think and operate. They will provide all of your assessment tasks, your calendars, the online contact, the feedback to your son, some marking, are all provided by that particular organisation. Okay? So if there's something we can't give him, look for those options, but only if at this stage he is well organised. If he is disorganised, distance education will be a nightmare. Okay? There are very strict and rigid timelines that have to be met for your son to get assessment back and to meet his homework requirements and learning requirements. The other kicker about distance education is that it'll cost you $1,000 per subject per year. Okay? But it's an option. Here's a couple of examples of things boys have done in the past. Okay? We haven't run an economics class for about 10 years. Likewise, accounting, the numbers haven't been there. Okay? And that's not just here, that seems to be a national trend. And that's probably killing Mrs. Russell, who's an accountant by trade. All right? But boys in the past have chosen to go to distance education for some of those things. We had a boy who was a dance wolf. That was his passion. So he would video his performances and he would send the information or upload the information to the Brisbane School of Distance Education. All right? He's now running his own dance business in conglomeration with a percussion group down in Sydney, and he's doing very, very well. We couldn't offer dance. You might get one boy in 10 years wanting to do dance at an all-boys school, but he found the course and went and did it. Okay? We will help you as much as we can with all the requirements to do it. It's up to you what you find. Music certification. As I mentioned before, Caleb is one of our musical wolves. If your boy has a passion for music, then he can continue with his music tuition that he may currently be doing. If he wants to learn the guitar just for the sake of learning the guitar, he can do it as one of his 4 subjects. It's not going to give him any results on a piece of paper. It's not going to contribute to his QCE, but he can learn to play the guitar. Right? 5 subjects, pick up MTP. That's a very good way of relieving stress, if I'm correct, Caleb. Is that right? Okay. Music theory and performance takes it up a notch slightly. He can also get accreditation for undertaking music courses. Most of those are done through the AMEB, the Australian Music Examination Board. So things like grade 6 clarinet, grade 4 vocals, grade 5 percussion. So he can have a piece of paper to go with it. Or he can do the music as a general subject, which will contribute to his ATAR. Okay. All right, almost done. If your son wants to go to TAFE next year, he can. If he wants to start university next year, he can. Here's a list of TAFE courses that our boys have done over the years. Okay. Again, we don't offer those subjects. You might get one boy every few years who wants to do some of those. But if your son has an interest in that area, he can find it and do it. Child care, services is for somebody who wants to work in the childcare industry. Again, one of the boys found it and undertook that particular course. Retail operations is where you learn the skill of working behind a counter, operating the tills, operating the computers that go with it, stock taking, purchasing orders, invoices, all those type of things. And the boy that did that course worked at Green's Musical because he liked music and he wanted to sell musical instruments, he wanted to sell guitars and drums and all that sort of thing. Okay? This guy was probably the most interesting. Our Certificate 2 in Seafood Management, he wanted to be a Marine Parks Ranger and found out at that time that that certificate was going to be the one that would be the most valuable in getting him a job as a Marine Parks Ranger. Problem, it's in Lennox Heads. Not a problem, it was done online. So he worked in our library and did it externally through Lennox Head. Problem, 2 weeks practical had to be performed at Lennox Head. Not a problem, had relations down there. Again, it all just seemed to fall into place for him. So he ended up getting that particular certificate, okay? And that's where I said to the boys today. So now you ask me the question, is he a Marine Parks Ranger? And the answer is no, he's driving trucks in the Northern Territory, okay? But at the time, he wanted to be a Marine Parks Ranger so badly that he went to all the trouble of doing that. Okay? So it's there just to let you know that there are options. TAFE courses, thing you need to be aware about most of them is that they're full fee paying, but because your son is at high school, there is a significant concession for him. So it's better doing it now than paying full price later. You may also find that he has to go to Rockhampton TAFE or the Yeppoon TAFE 1 day a week, which brings in transport problems. And we only let the boys participate in one subject because if they're going to Yeppoon TAFE or Rocky TAFE 1 day a week, that's too much time out of their other subjects, which they also need to devote their time to. Okay. University options. Like TAFE courses, they are generally full fee paying, but for those of you maybe studying who've got other boys studying, again, it's significantly reduced. Your son can start university for about $400 per course per semester. Once he gets out into the real world and starts paying for it by himself or through HECS or you're paying for it, it's more likely to be $800 per subject per semester. Okay. Good place to start looking, and I'll give the boys the information about this in the next few days, is CQU. They run a thing called the SUN program, which is Start University Now, and they can pretty much choose from a wide range of subjects. But again, there's just a couple. Aviation technology was undertaken by a boy who wanted to get in the Air Force. He is now flying planes in the Air Force. He did aviation technology for most of his 2 years of senior schooling while he was here. Journalism, we had another boy who undertook journalism at CQU. Did a semester, got a distinction, which is the equivalent of a B, and then he dropped out. Okay? So when I told the boys that one today, they said they couldn't really fathom why he dropped out. He dropped out because he didn't like journalism. Spent a semester doing it to find out, I don't want to be a journalist. He's now an engineer working for BHP. All right? And he saved himself 6 months of grief, basically, by working in journalism while he was at school. Okay? So things to think about. Again, if your son's not organised, if your son doesn't have the study routines and habits in place now, it's probably best to avoid the university options, but it is there. Okay? And we mentioned before about a study line. Well, your son can do a study line, but not everyone can do a study line. It's available for those boys who are doing 5 general subjects. Okay? So they're covering their basis for their ATAR requirements, or for boys who are doing 4 general subjects and 1 applied subject or 1 certificate course. Again, they're ATAR eligible. If your son decides to take a TAFE course or a university option or a distance education, he can pick up a line of spares and he will use his line of spares or his study time to complete those courses, supervised in our library. If he undertakes a school-based apprenticeship, he'll be out of school 1 day a week. And again, they drop a line because it's a lot of lost contact time. And that's pretty much the presentation up to where do we go from here. From here, which starts next week, I'm going to get all of your sons, half of them will be in this room, half of them will be in OD7. and we're going to give them a code, and they will take that code and they'll put it into a thing called Web Preferences Manager. And Web Preference Manager will list all of their subjects that are on option, and they go through and select their 6 preferred subjects and 2 spares subjects. Once they've done that, we print out a receipt of what they're wanting to do and the order they want to do in, and we'll send it home to you with a digital copy of the college handbook. You then sit down with your son and say yay or nay, and you can change his preferences up to about 5 or 6 times in that particular system. Okay? Once we've got what we believe to be his preferences, after they've talked to you about it, we'll then sit down with each boy, or a member of the leadership team will sit down with each of the boy, and we'll undertake a set plan, a student education and training plan, where we look at his list of subjects and what he's choosing, and we look at does it match his career ambitions or potential. Okay? We might then make some suggestions for him, change some subjects again. Again, you'll be informed of that particular process. All right? So by this stage, we've looked at their preferences probably about 3 times, and we're thinking it's getting close to where it needs to be. We then take all those preferences, every kid's choices, and we dump them into a timetable program. The timetable runs an algorithm, and it slots all of those subjects onto those 6 lines where it thinks it's going to give the best choices for every kid. Now, last year it was about 99% of your boys got their first 4 choices. It dropped to the 5th choice, wherein it was about 98%, and then, 95% of boys got their 6th choice. So the majority of boys will get the subjects that they want to do. Not everyone does because there are those limitations, okay? But that's the process. Once we've got the lines set up in place, we will send home again the subject list showing you how it all fits on the lines. Again, if he has to come in and change the subjects, it's doable, all right? And again, you're informed of that process all the way through. Okay. And on top of all of that, we've just spent 2 days working with them. We've just spent 2 days working with them to basically fill them in on that information about the QCAA and about the range of subjects. They've also done some career and personality profiling. They'll also look at some job sites. And I encourage you to go and have a look at the SBC Careers site, because it's all set up as a digital platform, and your boy can create his own portfolio in there. So it's something to think about. Okay, panel of experts. My panel has been diminished. So there are 2 experts who are going to cop a real razzing tomorrow for not turning up tonight. But I have a reduced panel of experts. Kevin Keller, Charlie Hearn, Caleb Bartlett. I say panel of experts. Bill Grieve, sit down. I say panel of experts because these boys were in exactly the same position as your sons only 12 months ago. And they've been the first boys to go through this new particular system. And we just thought we might ask them a couple of subjects about their journey. Is that going to work for me, Mr. Owens? Thank you. So we'll start with Kevin. Kevin, would you like to tell everyone your range of subjects and why you've chosen some of those?
I do general English, so ATAR English, study of religion, digital solutions, physics, specialist maths and math methods. And I chose those subjects mainly because I like math and physics, and yeah.
So you're a bit of a maths?
Yeah, I'm a math wolf, basically, yeah.
That's the language I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
How have you found, now you're a fairly academic boy all the way through. How have you found the jump from year 10 to year 11?
It's probably the biggest jump I've done so far.
Yep.
The workload is massive compared to grade 10 and the years before, and it's something I've had a bit of trouble with coping, but overall I've handled it pretty well.
Yep. What makes it hard?
Probably because the workload goes up. A lot of assessments happen simultaneously for a lot of subjects at the same time.
Yep.
Right now I've got about 3 assignments and many exams to study for at the end of the term.
Yep. Okay. Charlie, your subject choices and reasons?
So I do general English, general math, visual art, geography, business and Christian ministry.
Yep.
So I've been wanting to do business, bachelor in business, and kind of like filmmaking. That's why I do art. So yeah.
Now you're thinking of university where?
Griffith or QUT,
Yep.
just because of the business and, you know, the film school side of things.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yeah. And like Kevin, how did you find the jump from year 10 to year 11?
Crazy. Like I know we spent all this time preparing for it, but I think myself and a lot of other of my peers really like underestimated the system, and it kind of just blew us all away. And
Yep.
it's just like, you know, it's kind of finally now like everyone's like adjusting to it and like finding their own techniques and routines with their study. So yeah, everyone's settled in.
Excellent. Caleb?
So I'm doing general English, general maths, SOR, digital solutions, general music, and music theory and performance. And as Mr. Horan said, I am quite like a musical person.
Wolf.
A musical wolf.
Thank you.
So that is why I chose to like music subjects. It helps me like I want to be able to be a performer after school, so that's helping me to get there.
Now the interesting thing is you're ATAR eligible, but the course you want to get into isn't necessarily, or doesn't require an ATAR? Is that
No,
right?
it does not require an ATAR. It's mainly an audition process.
Yep.
The only prerequisite is English.
So why put yourself through the pain of those external exams?
Because with the career that I'm going to is a very competitive career, and it's always very important to have like a backup. So the course that I have a backup does need an ATAR to be able to get into it.
Yep.
So
you're covering all bases,
yes.
all right? And you're only doing the 5 ATAR subjects,
Yes, and when applied.
whereas I think Charlie and Kevin, you're both doing 6? No, Charlie, you're doing 5?
Yeah.
So what do you do? What's your other subject?
Christian ministry.
Okay, so you've picked up the Certificate 3 in Christian Ministry, which will also contribute towards an ATAR at the end of the day. All right. Let's talk about study habits, study routines. Caleb, do you have any?
I don't have like major study habits because my schedule like outside of school and in school is always changing, so it's been very hard to try and create a solid study plan, but I do try to like study and do homework as much as I can.
What do you mean your schedule's changing?
So outside of school I've been doing many shows and performances, so like rehearsal days and times would always be changing.
Yep. So you just try and squeeze in where you can what you need to do.
Yeah.
Now, Charlie, you've got a bit more of a routine than Caleb by the sounds of things, because I liked what you said to the boys. Can you tell the parents how you go about studying?
Yeah, so I just think, I'm trying to remember what I said. So yeah, with mine I kind of try to get at least, I don't set, okay, 4:30, 5:30. I just start doing my homework and finish whatever I need to get done. And then if I haven't done enough or I need to do some more, I'll wake up earlier in the morning and spend an hour in the morning doing just whatever, trying to keep ahead of it. And I also said to the boys, taking advantage of tutorials is really key because I know myself, like, found it hard to ask for help because I don't know, I felt ashamed or something, but I've found that once I could ask for that help and once I did get those tutorials, that it really helped me. And yeah.
What I liked about what Charlie said this morning was that I'm not a night person. So Charlie prefers to go to bed earlier at night, but to find time for his study, he gets up early in the morning. And he was trying to do 3 or 4 hours a week by basically getting up early and doing an hour each morning to try and accommodate that workload.
Yeah.
So I think you also need to look at your son's rhythms. Is he a night person? Is he not a night person? When's the best time for him to study? And just get him to ask that question, because that's a really insightful comment from Charlie that he made this morning. And a lot of boys don't recognise that. Kevin, your study routines and habits?
I think I'm more like Charlie as well, but I'm not the morning person. I usually go into the night, maybe 11 o'clock or later. But I don't have an exact set timetable either. I just developed a gut feeling over the years, and if I need to work on this assignment, I'll work on it. If I need to prepare for an exam, I'll do that as soon as I can, and if I have the time.
How many hours a week would you be studying or doing schoolwork or assignment-based work, average week? What would be the time requirements?
Majority of the time. More. I can't put a number on it. Like it's a lot, right?
Yeah. Mr. Grieve is giving you hand signals there. Guy, as a rough guide, when your son hits year 11, should be doing about an hour and a half to 2 hours, 5 to 6 times a week. And that may actually get up to about 3 hours, 5 or 6 times a week by the time he hits grade 12. Okay? That's if he's really wanting to aim for a high-end ATAR. Now that sounds a lot, but we certainly wouldn't recommend that you do a block of 3 hours. We can put your boys through study skills programs and show them they need to break that time up. They need to work out when it fits into their time frame. And there are a couple of boys, those 2 empty chairs, who are going to get killed tomorrow when I see them, but they were talking about, Braden is a trade-based boy, and he was talking about his best time, go straight to the library after school. He's got to be here for rugby league training, he's got to be here for other activities, so he knocks over an hour before he goes and trains. Isaac was talking about the fact that he uses his 1 hour release time to catch up on all that work that he's missed because he's been away on a school-based apprenticeship. Right? So the boys need to look at their circumstances. Caleb's, I would hate to do a set plan for Caleb, knowing what Caleb's outside commitments are, but Caleb's got to try and find those 20 minutes, those 15 minutes, those half-hour time slots throughout his week. And if you can set up a schedule, it does make life easier. All right. Words of advice. What have you got that you can offer that hasn't already been said?
Take advantage of going and seeing teachers, like Charlie said. Go to tutorials and really talk to your teachers and communicate and be open there, and not just hide away at the back of the classroom and just think it's going to be all right, because it is a big jump. Yeah, don't underestimate it.
Thanks, Kev. Charlie?
One of the massive things is, for me anyway, was focus. It's just like you have to focus because it's so easy to fall behind. It's no like random days off. Well, I know I used to do that, but...
Oh, did you? We'll talk about that, Mr.
Yeah, it's just, if you miss a day, it's very crucial that you catch up, because, say, if you're doing methods, you're covering 6 chapters in one term, and if you miss a day, then it's like, that's like, it could be like half a chapter, you know. So, yeah, I just think adding on to that, like sleep is a big thing, because it's very easy to burn yourself out. So yeah, just like staying on top of it and not falling behind is a massive thing.
Excellent. Thanks, Charlie. Caleb?
Yeah, pretty much just what Kevin and Charlie have just said. Just when you do fall, if you do fall behind, it's very hard to like catch up and keep going. So just trying to stay on top of everything.
Regular commitment. Yep. And I think Caleb is probably the best example of your son still has to have a life, okay? So he's still got to do those things that he enjoys. He's still got to do the social aspects. Like Caleb does a lot of dance and a lot of performance and a lot of music because he likes that stuff. Kevin also does a lot of music as well. Charlie, you do the musical stuff? No? Okay. He's not a musical wolf. That's all right. But those other things are important. They're important holistically, and at the end of the day, what matters is that you get rewarded for the effort that you put in, but it's only a numeric score, and it's not the end of the world. And there's multiple opportunities to get the career and the occupation that you want. Okay? A lot of boys are distraught when they can't get into medicine. I miss medicine. Okay? But you will find that you can go and do a general science degree at the same university where you will do the same topics as a guy doing medicine, and then if you do well there, you can use your grade point average once you're at university to go over to medicine, okay? And a lot of university courses are set up like that. You will do the same work as somebody else in a more perceived harder subject, and follow your path that way. So can I just ask you to put your hands together for these boys, please? And if you'd like to talk to them later, they'll be coming downstairs. Well, maybe not Charlie, I think he's got to go home for sleep. But the other boys may be downstairs for you to have a talk to if you like. Folks, I've got one more presentation to give. So maybe if you'd like to stand up, have a bit of a stretch or a talk, I'll load that particular presentation in. Okay. How are those chairs? Oh.
They're very comfortable. Well, I bought Lane's chair at home. He's I'm thinking I need to be in that other room. Well, they must be comfortable too.
They are.
You got to apply for a job to get in. You've either got to get up a higher level or apply for a job.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yep.
Really got the flex.
All right, folks, if we get back to it. So we've talked about this new system, external examinations, the ATAR, the range of subject categories that your son can choose from. I think the other important thing to talk about is the QCE. We've mentioned it a couple of times tonight, but the QCE is the Queensland Certificate of Education. Now, that particular certificate is given to Year 12s when they graduate, and it was first introduced in 2008. So it's into about its 11th year, and last year was again the biggest change to the QCE in a decade. Okay. It's a credit-based certificate, so to be awarded, your son has to get a certain number of credit points. It's a minimum standards certificate. He has to achieve a C in English and a C in numeracy at some stage. He also has to get a minimum of a C result or a satisfactory to be allocated those credit points. And it's not a time-based certificate, okay? So back in the day when myself and Mr. Wall went to senior, when we finished, regardless of our results, how good or bad they were, we were given a certificate. You're basically awarded or rewarded for the time that you spent at high school. Your kid won't get it just for turning up. So that's why it's been introduced. What does it look like? It's a single-page degree-style qualification. So if you go to your doctors and see their doctorate hanging on the wall, it's pretty much a one-page sample that looks like that. Okay. But your son gets more than that. When he graduates and he has met the requirements for a QCE, he'll also get a senior statement, and the senior statement will show for you all of his subjects that he studied, the number of semesters or units that he studied or completed for those particular subjects, his result of an A to E for each of those subjects, the raw score for the general subjects, that number out of 100, And in conjunction, any vocational education certificates that he's attained, he will receive those with his senior statement and his Queensland education package along the way. Okay, so there's a senior statement listing all of those things, and in their entirety, his senior education profile could look like that. QCE, vet certificates, and a listing of his subjects and the scores, and his ATAR will also potentially appear on there. Okay? So, how much credit and how does he get it? He needs 20 points. He gets the points by getting a C result, and that can be brought into a sound or a pass or a satisfactory in any general subject. So if he studies a general subject all the way through from year 11 to year 12, he does 4 units, he will get 4 points if he passes all of those along the way. Applied subjects contribute just as much as general subjects. So those subjects that are more skills-based, more practical-based, they still give him credit for his Queensland Certificate of Education. So he can do religion and ethics, he can do aquatic practices, and it will all contribute to this QCE. If he does a vocational education certificate at a level 2, that will give him 4 points if he completes all the modules, and if he undertakes the certificate 3, vet certificate, he will get 8 points. All right, so we mentioned the certificate 3 or 4 in Christian ministry before. I prefer to tell your sons to do that one than to do RE because there's 8 points towards his QCE. Okay? And it's another certificate for his resume. Following on, your music certificates through the AMEB will give him 1 point. School-based apprenticeship, if he undertakes a school-based apprenticeship, the 100 days on-the-job training that he does over 2 years, that will give him 4 points as well. And if he undertakes a school-based traineeship, it's the certificate course that he completes as part of that at a certificate 2 level that will generally give him 4 points also. University courses, they don't offer as much, generally 1 to 2 points per semester course. Okay. There are some rules around accruing those particular points, and to receive 4 points for passing at the end of grade 12, he has to pass each unit along the way. So unit 1 in year 11, if he passes that, that's 1 point. Unit 2, that's 1 point. And then he has to complete units 3 and 4, pass both of those at grade 12 to get the other 2 points. Okay. Partial points are also possible. Okay, so that means if he passes unit 1, he'll get 1 point. If he fails unit 2, he won't get points for that, but that 1 point can still contribute. And likewise, he's got to pass unit 3 and 4 as a pair. All right. So here's a bit of an example of how that's going to be tracked by the QCAA for each of your sons. And each of your sons will have the opportunity to set up a learning account with the Queensland Curriculum and Assessment Authority, and we download all of our results to them on a regular basis, and you and your son will be able to check how he's going on his QCE, although myself and the head of Year 12 will do that independently as well. Okay, but you can see in those examples, for Unit 1, the boy got a U, which is unsatisfactory. For Unit 2, he got a satisfactory, and then he passed Unit 3 and 4, so there's 3 points. Okay, and if we take that combination of subjects, gives him a total of 21 points. He needs 20 points, so they would award his QCE to him. Okay, this is also slightly confusing. I know I've talked about raw scores. I know I talked about A to E results, but as a school, we are required to let the QCAA know that your son is either satisfactory or unsatisfactory for his units in grade 11. All right. So while we, for a subject, will give him his raw score and a C result, you will also see at some stage me sending you home information that your son has got an S for this or a U for that. Okay. So it's just another little complication they threw into the whole mix of things, as if it wasn't complicated enough. Mr. Wilson.
Can you just clarify for anyone the fact that in English and in maths,
Yep.
technically they haven't passed every single grade. They haven't got 1 point for each
No, no.
Still get enough numbers.
They will still get enough numbers. Okay, you can see in his case, digital solutions, agricultural science and business, he's passed those all the way through. Because he's passed every single unit, well, there's 4 points. Okay, so it's 12 points from those subjects, and then he's passed individual units along the way, and it can contribute points as well. All right, so just because he fails something doesn't mean it's the end of the world, that he's not going to get his QCE. You know, you do have to track it carefully, and we do monitor them carefully, but it is possible. Mind you, if you're doing 5 ATAR subjects, okay, and this is one of the other benefits of doing 6, if you're doing 5 ATAR subjects and you fail a unit, well, you're at 19 points. All right? So there's a slim chance there of getting your QCE.
So before when you said year 11 didn't really count, I don't get it.
Year 11 doesn't count for their ATAR. It's only grade 12, and that's what I said. I think the QTAC, the Queensland Tertiary Admissions Centre, have done a really good thing there in not taking the year 11 work. The Queensland Curriculum and Assessment Authority, I think they've stuffed up a little bit in the allocation of the units towards their QCE. All right? So that's the difference, that's the distinction, and that's one of the reasons I'm going through this stuff as well, so that you are aware of that.
What are you going to use the QCE?
What are you going to use the QCE for? Can I finish with that big crescendo? Thank you. Okay. All right. Credit accrual example, there's just another case, a different range of subjects from a different student with different results. Okay. You can see he didn't have much luck in geography. Failed both those units, so what's he done? He's made a smart decision, I'll get out of geography. Okay. Hasn't looked like he's picked up any other subject, but he's got 100% complete for the Certificate 2 in Tourism and the Certificate 2 in Business, so there's 8 points over there. So in total, he's got 22 points. Okay? Passed most of his other subjects. Okay? So other than the credit points, what else is required? We said that it's a minimum standards certificate. You've got to get a minimum standard in literacy and a minimum standard in numeracy. So he needs to meet his literacy requirement. So he has to have a C in a unit of English or Essential English at some stage throughout his time at the college. Okay? So while he's got to pass English at grade 12 for units 3 and 4 to get an ATAR, to get his QCE, he only has to pass one unit, or effectively one semester, to meet his literacy requirement for the QCE. All right. Numeracy requirement is the next one. Like English, they're saying there's a minimum standard that we expect from senior students departing our schools, and they also have to get that numeracy requirement. So a C in at least one unit in year 11, or a pair of units in grade 12 for any of essential mathematics, general mathematics, mathematics methods, or specialist mathematics. Okay. What else is needed? And I think Mr. Wilson might have been touching more on this. 12 of his points have to come from what we call core subjects that he has studied for the 2 years of senior schooling and passed. Okay? So you get credit for passing individual units, but 12 of your points have to come from subjects that you've pretty much stayed in for the entire time and passed all the way along. Alternatively, he could pick up a vocational education certificate, get all the modules, and that is also classified as a core subject. Okay? And we call that the completed core rule. Does any of that make sense? Yep. Good. Believe it or not, your sons actually pick up all this stuff as we go through. So if we look at completed core, you can see again that this boy here, or girl, digital solutions, agriculture and business. So 12 points, 12 of his 20 points have come from those 3 subjects that he stayed in all the way through and passed every unit along the way. Okay? And other points have then come from drama, which he didn't do the whole way through, and also from English and math methods and general mathematics, so he can pick up those other subjects along the way. So when we talked before about changing subjects, well, one of the reasons we don't want the boys changing subjects is because it can impact quite significantly on that completed core rule, or that completed core requirement. Okay. With all of that said, there's an exemption. The literacy and numeracy results are exempt or can contribute still to the completed core rule, even if he changes subjects, but only within an English and a mathematical subject area. So it's probably best shown by an example as well. So this kid, agricultural science and business, studied them all the way through, okay, and has passed them, so there's 8 points from completed core. English, he's only done it, essential English, he's only done it for Unit 3 and 4 at grade 12, but he's passed, so that's another 2 points from completed core, there's 10. All right. Essential mathematics, he's picked that up in grade 12, there's 2 points, so there's basically 12 points from completed core because the literacy and numeracy requirements are exempt from that continuation rule. So it's like saying you've stayed in mathematics for the whole 2 years anyway, even though you changed within a mathematics subject. You've stayed in English all the way through, even though you may have dropped it. Okay? So old mate here, to kick him in the guts, he gets his 12 points from completed core, but didn't pass enough other subjects to get his 20 points in total. Okay? So, what happens if you don't get the 20 points, you don't meet the literacy requirements? Well, you don't get your QCE. But you will still get your senior statement showing all of your results. You will still get your senior statement showing your raw scores. You still get an ATAR if you've done 5 general subjects. Okay? You can get your QCE 8 years after leaving school. Your learning account will stay open with the QCAA, and any learning that you do after leaving school, like a Certificate 3 in construction or a Certificate 4 in electrotech, whatever it may be, you can bank that in as soon as you've finished it and get your Queensland Certificate of Education. Okay. Why is in the subject selection? Some employers will use your QCE as a bit of a minimum requirement because it's perceived and the literature says it's a minimum standards requirement. There's a lot of people out there in the industry that know it because they see kids coming in with their resumes. Where's your QCE? Why didn't you get it? I failed maths. Oh, sorry, mate, we're looking for people who pass maths. And effectively, you'll be competing with about 80%, 87% of the graduating cohort who will get a QCE. Okay? And that number keeps going up every year. So in terms of why do you want to get it? Well, I guess the bigger question is, why do you don't want to get it? And do you really want to be one of the 13 students who don't have a QCE? Because it's the expected minimum graduation certificate when you leave. Okay? But I do know that there have been kids who have missed out on getting their QCE, and one of them, the most ridiculous one, was that he got an OP of 5. Okay, so an ATAR in the high 80s, low 90s. Now, he went and studied Japanese in Japan, and because he couldn't do that completed core rule, because he decided he was going to go and study in Japan, the QCAA didn't give him one. So he comes back, does his senior subjects, gets an OP equivalent of 5, but never got his QCE. All right? So it was ridiculous in the end. He was then doing a double degree at Bond somewhere, so he's got degrees on his wall, but theoretically never passed high school. Okay? It is a little bit crazy. All right. So, folks, any questions about the QCE? Yep. Yeah, no, one of the reasons we give out term-based reports is so that we can track that process. So every semester, you'll receive a letter from us telling him that he's on track for his QCE or he's not on track, and this is the reason he is or he isn't. So we'll do that process for the full 2 years. Okay? For everyone other than this first group of students going through, they will have a learning account set up for the QCAA, with showing all of his subjects. It directly links to the school, and as soon as his results go in there, you'll be able to go online and check that, okay? But these poor bunnies that are doing it for the first year, well, they haven't opened that up yet, so, you know, it's all just by me basically telling them you're on track or you're not on track, all right? So, but apparently the QCAA is going to open up their learning accounts for them later this month, possibly into September, okay? 9 months after they've started year 11. So think yourselves lucky, boys. Any other questions? No? All right. Well, folks, thank you for joining us this evening. I hope that has helped in some degree. Feel free to come and talk to the heads of department or Mrs. Russell about careers or guidance. They'll be downstairs. Bill Grieve will be downstairs if you'd like to talk about mathematics, but please don't talk to him too long. And you're welcome to join us downstairs for light refreshments. There's some beer and wine and also some food that is set up down there for us for the opportunity to have a talk. It's easiest probably just to go through here and down these stairs or straight out the door and downstairs into the dining area directly underneath us. Thanks again.